At exactly 10:03 a.m., the courtroom clock made a soft clicking sound that nobody else seemed to notice. I did. I noticed everything that morning. The way the air felt too dry. The way my shoe rubbed my heel raw. The way two people sitting at the front row leaned toward each other and laughed quietly, like they were sharing a private joke at a movie theater instead of a courtroom. My wife and the man she cheated on me with were laughing. I was not in the room yet. I know this because later, when I replayed it all in my head, which I do more than I should, that moment burned itself into my memory like a freeze frame. They thought I wasn't coming. They thought I was late because I was weak, disorganized, overwhelmed. They thought the day was already won. What they didn't know was that I was sitting in my car across the street, hands shaking so badly I couldn't turn the key. Not because I was afraid of the judge. Not because I was afraid of losing the case. I had already lost much worse things than property or paperwork. I was afraid of walking into a room where my life had become a punchline. 6 months earlier, I still believed in quiet evenings and shared grocery lists. Now my marriage was a legal file number, and the woman I once trusted with my future was giggling beside someone else like this was all entertainment. I stared at the courthouse steps and told myself, very calmly, very stupidly, that if I waited just one more minute, maybe none of this would be real. The clerk inside cleared her throat. Somewhere, a pin clicked. The judge adjusted his glasses. Time kept moving without asking my permission. I finally opened the car door. As I crossed the street, I could still see them through the tall glass windows. My wife, her posture relaxed, confident, leaned back in her chair. The man next to her crossed his arms like he belonged there, like he had earned that seat. And then she smiled at him. A small, knowing smile. The kind she used to save for me when we were in on something together. That smile hurt more than the cheating ever did. When I pushed open the courtroom door, the hinges made a sound that was louder than it had any right to be. Heads turned. My wife turned last. Her smile didn't disappear right away. It stalled, frozen halfway, as if her face hadn't gotten the message yet. I caught her eye. For a second, nobody spoke. The judge looked annoyed. The clerk looked relieved. My wife looked confused. And the man beside her? He looked irritated, like I had shown up late to a meeting I wasn't important enough to attend anyway. I took my seat without saying a word. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. My hands finally stopped shaking, which surprised me. I felt oddly calm. Too calm. Like the worst part had already passed. My wife leaned toward him and whispered something again. He smirked. Actually smirked. Like this was still funny. That's when I realized something that changed everything. They truly believed they knew how this story ended. They had no idea that the reason I was late had nothing to do with panic, traffic, or nerves, and everything to do with timing. Very careful timing. Because the shock waiting for them wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet, documented, permanent, and it was about to land. I could feel their eyes on me, but I refused to look back. I didn't want to see their smug faces or their little whispered jokes. I just sat there, quietly placing the small manila envelope on the desk in front of me. Not dramatic, not flashy, just calm. It was heavier than it looked, not in weight, but in meaning. That envelope was the reason I was late. The reason I'd waited outside in my car until exactly 10 a.m. Because every single second counted. The judge cleared his throat. Mr. Willoughby, you're late. I nodded, didn't make excuses. Won't happen again, Your Honor. I mumbled, my voice dry. Across the aisle, Odessa leaned into Cal again. Yeah, the mechanic with the playlist. They were sharing whispers like teenagers in the back of class. I hated how normal it all seemed to them. Like destroying a marriage was just an errand to be crossed off. File for divorce. Split the assets. Smile for the win. Odessa's lawyer stood and started her routine, painting me like some neglectful, absent-minded husband who made her feel invisible. I'd heard it all in the pre-trial meetings, but it still stung. My client was emotionally abandoned. She felt isolated in her own home for years. Isolated? She had more attention from men than a spotlight at a Broadway show. She simply wants a fresh start, Your Honor. A clean break. A clean break. That's what they always say. Like you're just snapping a pencil and tossing it aside. My lawyer, Mr. Ballard, finally stood. I barely knew him. He was recommended by a colleague at work, and we'd only had 2 long meetings. But he was efficient. Cold. Not unkind, just sharp. Before we proceed, he said smoothly, we'd like to submit new material to the court. This pertains directly to the financial division and the timeline of certain romantic developments that were not previously disclosed. Odessa's lawyer stiffened. Objection. This was not submitted through proper channels. Ballard didn't flinch. It's evidence of fraud, Your Honor, and it directly affects spousal support and property allocation. That got everyone's attention. Even Cal straightened up. The judge adjusted his glasses and motioned for the bailiff to collect the envelope. I didn't move. I didn't smirk. I just watched Odessa's face shift. Confusion first, then a little crease of worry between her brows. Inside that envelope were 6 months' worth of private investigator reports, financial records, text message transcripts, and one very particular signed statement. See, the thing about Cal? He wasn't just a guy who broke up my marriage. He was also a guy who had 2 kids of his own and a court order not to leave the state. That weekend trip he and Odessa took to Nevada? Yeah, that broke his custody agreement. And guess who documented every step of that trip? My PI, Ethan. Best money I ever spent. But that wasn't the kicker. The real shock was in the bank account statements. Turns out, Odessa and Cal had been using my money for almost every hotel, flight, and meal. Not just joint funds, my personal savings, pulled from an old auto transfer she forgot to delete. The judge opened the envelope and started flipping through. I couldn't see his expression clearly, but his silence was enough. Odessa looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, she wasn't smirking. Her eyes darted across the room, then back to the judge, and finally down to her lap. Cal looked irritated again, then nervous. The judge set the papers down and leaned back in his chair. We'll take a short recess, he said, and then I will speak with counsel privately in chambers. And just like that, the momentum shifted. No one was laughing anymore. I sat still. No gloating. No triumph. Just the quiet weight of 6 months of heartbreak, betrayal, and quiet planning settling into place. I told myself not to enjoy it, but part of me did. The recess felt like an eternity. I didn't move from my chair. Odessa, on the other hand, kept shifting in hers like the cushion had suddenly turned into a pile of needles. Cal leaned over and whispered something to her again, but this time she didn't smile. She didn't even respond. She just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched tight, and I noticed something I hadn't seen in months. Her composure cracking. That was new. That was interesting. I'd spent half a year drowning in silence, trying to figure out what I did wrong. Replaying conversations, wondering if I should have taken more time off work, if I should have gone to that couple's retreat she once sent me a link to but never mentioned again. I carried every piece of blame she threw at me and made a home out of it. And now, for the first time, the courtroom was quiet, but not because I didn't know what to say. They didn't. Ballard sat beside me, arms folded, completely unfazed by the tension in the room. The guy could have been watching paint dry, and he would have looked the same. But me? I was trying to keep my breathing normal. My palms were sweaty, even though the air conditioner was on full blast. This wasn't victory yet. This was just the beginning of the unraveling. 10 minutes later, the judge returned from chambers. His tone was flat, official, but I noticed how carefully he avoided eye contact with Odessa's lawyer. We've reviewed the submitted evidence, he began, flipping through a few pages as if reminding himself of the weight behind them. There are serious implications here regarding the misuse of marital funds and timeline misrepresentations. Odessa's lawyer cleared her throat. Your Honor, we would like time to. You'll get it, the judge interrupted, firm. But first, I'm placing a temporary hold on all financial distributions and support rulings until a full investigation is conducted. Boom. You could hear it in the room. That subtle shift. The change in air pressure when a power dynamic flips. Cal leaned back in his chair too fast, like someone had just kicked it. Odessa blinked. Once, twice. Then looked down like the wood grain of the table suddenly mattered more than anything else. But I wasn't done. Ballard stood. Additionally, we're requesting the court allow for a sworn deposition from Mr. Wilkes. He motioned toward Cal without looking at him, regarding his involvement in Ms. Willoughby's finances, as well as their shared out-of-state travel during the marriage, which may have bearing on both custody and asset division. Now Cal finally spoke. Whoa, hold on, he said, trying to laugh like this was all one big misunderstanding. I didn't even know she was still officially married. That made me snort, out loud. I hadn't planned to, but it slipped. It was such a ridiculous lie that even the clerk raised her eyebrows. Odessa's eyes widened, barely turning toward him. "Cal," she muttered, like a warning. Too late. Ballard picked up on it instantly. "So Mr. Wilkes is confirming a romantic relationship during the legal marriage, with financial overlap. Thank you, Your Honor. We'll make note of that for the record." Cal shut his mouth. Odessa closed her eyes. The judge made another note and stood. "We'll resume in 1 week to review findings." Court adjourned. The gavel dropped. The silence after that was deafening. The kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full of unraveling lies, busted confidence, and quiet panic. People began shuffling out. I stood slowly, feeling every inch of my spine tighten. Cal was already heading for the door. He didn't even look back at Odessa. But she looked at me. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was disbelief. That wide-eyed look someone gives you when they realize the ground beneath them has already collapsed, and they're only just now starting to fall. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Let her fall. I didn't leave the courtroom right away. Most people were already gone, the chairs emptying fast like the scene after a bad play. But I stayed standing near the defense table, staring at the empty envelope in front of me. All that planning, all those nights spent second-guessing myself, gathering receipts and documents and quietly handing them over to Ethan, the private investigator who didn't ask questions, just worked. All of it had finally made a dent. I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. I felt steady, which was weird. Like I was walking through a house that had been burning for months, and I'd only now stepped through the door and realized what was left. Outside the courthouse, I spotted Odessa standing by the stone steps, phone clutched in one hand, the other gripping her coat like it was armor. She hadn't left with Cal. He'd walked out the other door, pacing toward his truck without even a glance at her. He didn't even wait. That was how much their love was worth. A courtroom inconvenience, and he vanished. I guess she thought I'd walk past her without saying anything. Or maybe she thought I'd still be the man she left, the one who couldn't look her in the eye, who flinched when she raised her voice, who apologized for asking why she came home at 2 a.m., smelling like hotel soap. But that man died somewhere around the second time she lied about working late. I slowed when I reached the steps, and for the first time in a year, I looked her dead in the face. "Why?" I asked quietly. No anger, no yelling. Just that. One stupid, soft word. Her eyes were already red. Maybe from crying. Maybe from trying not to. She didn't answer. Not at first. Then she exhaled hard, like she was finally willing to say what she'd practiced. "I didn't think you'd actually fight me on this," she said. That hit harder than I expected. I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, I figured." She shook her head like I was being unreasonable. Like exposing the truth was some kind of betrayal on my part. "Lane, it didn't have to get ugly." "You made it ugly," I said, my voice starting to crack. "You thought you could take the house, the car, even Murphy." "That was my lawyer's suggestion," she snapped, too quickly. "Don't," I warned. "Don't pretend this wasn't what you wanted. You and Cal were shopping for apartments together before the papers were even filed. You had me signing tax returns while he was picking out curtains." She flinched. Just slightly, but enough to satisfy something small and broken inside me. "You used to be kind," she said suddenly, softer, like the memory of it hurt her now. "Yeah," I said. "I was. Until I realized kind was just another word for easy to walk over." She looked away, jaw tight. That silence again. But this time, it wasn't courtroom tension. It was personal, thick with all the words we never said and all the lies she told over dinner. I walked away without waiting for anything else. No apology. No final line. I didn't need one. Back at my car, I sat for a long moment before driving off. Not because I was lost or confused, but because I was done reacting. For months, I let things happen to me. I absorbed the pain, the shame, the whispering looks at work. Now, things were starting to move in the other direction. I wasn't just some sad story in her rearview mirror anymore. And I knew something else she didn't. The worst part of the evidence wasn't even shown in court yet. Because while she and Cal were busy playing house behind my back, they left more than receipts. They left digital footprints. And Ethan had just sent me something that would change everything. I got the message from Ethan later that night, while sitting on my mattress on the floor. Yeah, she took the bed when she moved out, along with most of the furniture. Said she couldn't sleep anywhere else. As if her new boyfriend's place didn't already have a fully furnished bedroom with zero guilt. But honestly, I'd gotten used to the floor. There was something honest about it. No cushions, no illusions. Just reality. The message was short. Just a file and 5 words. He forgot to wipe it. I didn't even have to ask who. Cal, obviously. Ethan had been keeping tabs ever since I hired him, but I never expected a guy who could dismantle a V8 engine blindfolded to be so careless with digital traces. Turns out, Cal was old school in every way but one. He used cloud backups like a teenager. Photos, messages, voice memos. And the best part? He never updated his password. The same one for everything. WrenchGod87. Real subtle. I opened the folder. What I saw wasn't just incriminating. It was insulting. A whole library of their affair. Selfies from hotel beds. Screenshots of chats where they joked about me like I was a sitcom character they couldn't wait to write off. One message from Odessa read, "He's so gullible it's sad. I could say I'm visiting my cousin and he'd believe it." Again. I wasn't angry. Not in that moment. I was stunned. How easily she discarded me. Not just in action, but in how she talked about me. Like I was an afterthought. Like my love was some dumb inconvenience she had to hide under the rug while she went out playing dress-up with her new guy. But then came the real gold, the financial confession. Cal had recorded a voice memo the week before my court hearing. It was a full minute of him venting, probably drunk. He talked about how Odessa promised him they'd get everything, that she'd said I'd fold if they pushed hard enough. He even admitted they pulled money from our joint account on purpose, betting I wouldn't notice if the statements were sent to her email. It was more than betrayal. It was strategy. I sent it all to Ballard with a single sentence. "Can we use this?" His reply came within the hour. "Absolutely. It changes everything." The next morning, court resumed. Cal wasn't there. No surprise. After last week's mess, he probably figured it was safer to hide. Odessa came in alone, face stiff, hair perfect, dressed in a cream blouse like she was headed to brunch. But I could tell. The panic was under her skin. She didn't smile at me this time. Didn't even look. Ballard wasted no time. "Your Honor, the defense has submitted digital evidence obtained from the opposing party's third-party partner, with documented violations of financial manipulation and perjury under oath." Odessa's lawyer barely had time to stand before the judge raised a hand. "Let me see it." It didn't take long. The judge listened to the audio twice. I watched Odessa the entire time. She sat like a statue, her lips twitching only once, when her own voice came up in one of Cal's saved recordings, laughing at how easy it had been to move money without me noticing. The judge leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. "Ms. Willoughby, you will answer these claims directly, under oath, or face immediate legal consequences." Odessa looked trapped. She blinked fast, like the words weren't real. "My client would like to request a recess," her lawyer began. "Denied," the judge said coldly. "If what I've heard is accurate, this goes beyond a divorce proceeding. This enters criminal territory." And there it was. Odessa looked at me, just once. Not with fury, not even regret. With fear. For the first time in our entire disaster of a separation, she realized I wasn't bluffing. I hadn't come to lose. She tried to talk her way out of it. Of course she did. Odessa always thought she could out-talk anything. She leaned forward at the witness stand, voice low and sweet, like she was explaining away a late library book, not months of deception. "It was never about hurting him," she said, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Hurting me? That wasn't just a side effect, it was the whole blueprint. She blamed Cal, said he pressured her, said she didn't even know he was recording things, said she got caught up in something, and didn't know how to get out. And for a moment, it looked like the judge was listening, until Ballard stood and calmly handed over a printed screenshot. It was a message from Odessa to Cal, plain as daylight. "Keep the receipts, but don't keep them where Lane can see. If this goes how I think, we'll be out clean before he even files a motion." The silence in the courtroom wasn't dramatic. It was surgical, precise, cold. The judge narrowed his eyes at her and leaned forward. "Did you write this, Ms. Willoughby?" She hesitated. That was it, one heartbeat too long. And that was all it took. The judge turned to her lawyer and said something I'll never forget. "You may want to speak to your client about the consequences of perjury before we continue." That was the moment I knew. She had officially lost control. Her confidence wasn't just cracked anymore. It was shattered. Her hands were shaking now, and I saw her pull them into her lap to hide it. Her lawyer requested a 10-minute break to consult with her privately. It was granted. I watched them disappear behind a side door, and the second it closed, I exhaled. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding everything inside. Ballard leaned toward me and whispered, "She's cornered. There's no clean exit now." And for once, I didn't feel like a whiny fool who'd been left in the dust. I felt like someone who'd finally stopped begging for closure and started building his own damn ending. While they were gone, I stared at the courtroom walls. I thought about the first time I saw Odessa, dancing barefoot on the beach during a group camping trip. She laughed like someone who didn't know the world anything. I was the guy holding the guitar who didn't know how to play. Somehow she picked me. But she didn't keep me. Not really. She kept the version of me who didn't question things. The version who accepted her distance as just a phase. The guy who watched her disappear a little more each day and blamed himself for her vanishing. That guy was gone now. When she returned, her hair was a mess. Not from wind or weather, from fingers, from stress. Her makeup looked heavier suddenly, like it had aged her 10 years in a hallway. She didn't look at me when she sat down. Not once. Her lawyer stood and announced they would not be contesting the latest evidence. They were withdrawing all claims for spousal support and relinquishing any claim to shared property, including the house and car. No drama. No apology. Just the sound of surrender. But the judge wasn't finished. "Mr. Willoughby," he said, turning to me, "would you like to proceed with counterclaims?" Ballard looked at me, waiting for a signal. And for a long moment, I said nothing. Because that was the moment I'd fantasized about for months. Her broken, her defeated, everyone in the room knowing the truth. I could have pushed further. I had enough evidence to make things really messy. Drag her name through more than just court records. But I didn't. Not because I pitied her. Because I finally didn't care. I looked at the judge and shook my head once. "No, Your Honor. I just want it over." And that, more than anything, seemed to catch her off guard. Because she didn't expect mercy. She expected revenge. I signed the final documents the next morning with a mechanical pen and a hand that barely felt like it belonged to me. The clerk barely looked up as she slid each page across the desk. Initial here. Full signature here. And here. The legal end of a 5-year marriage fit neatly into 12 pages and a stapled corner. Odessa wasn't in the building. Her attorney said she'd be signing separately, and honestly, I was relieved. I didn't want to see her again, not like that. Not after watching her squirm. Not after hearing her attorney fold like a bad poker hand. Not after hearing her say nothing while everything unraveled. What more was there to say? It was strange. I'd spent so long imagining this moment. And now that it was here, it didn't feel like fireworks or freedom. It felt like standing outside after a storm. You're not celebrating. You're just breathing again. On the way home, I stopped at the gas station, not because I needed gas, but because I needed to be somewhere normal. Somewhere where no one knew who I was or what courtroom I'd just left. I bought a soda and stood by the car for a minute, watching the cars pass, watching people exist without knowing they were walking through the same world I was trying to crawl out of. My phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. I didn't know he saved those recordings. I never meant for it to go that far. I just wanted to feel wanted again. It was her. I knew without asking. I stared at the screen for a long time. The nerve. Not to apologize. Not to take responsibility. But to make it about her. She wanted to feel wanted. So she drained our accounts, laughed about me behind my back, and dragged me through court to steal the house. All for some boost to her ego? I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. Let her watch the message sit there. Let her feel the weight of silence for once. That night, I found myself walking through the old neighborhood where we used to live. The house was still there, of course, but the light in the front room was off. Empty. Like her attempt to start fresh had stalled. The porch light flickered. I noticed a package on the front step with her name on it. I don't know why, but it hit me. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of her version of me. The one she thought would always crawl back. Except I wasn't crawling anymore. Back at my place, the tiny rented duplex that still smelled like the last tenant's microwave dinners. I sat on the floor, Murphy snoring next to me. Yeah, I got the dog. She didn't even fight me for him in the end. Maybe because she knew he'd never follow her out the door. My phone buzzed again. Another message. "Do you think we'll ever talk again?" I keep thinking about the beach. That first trip. I didn't fake any of it back then, I swear. It made my chest tighten for a second. Just one. That was the trip where she fell asleep on my chest, sunburned and smiling, tracing lines on my collarbone with her fingers while whispering, "Don't ruin this, Lane. Don't become like everyone else." Funny, she became everyone else. I powered off the phone. Then I opened my laptop. There was one last thing I hadn't told her. One more surprise waiting in the wings. I didn't plan it out of spite. It just happened naturally, like all the best revenge does. You see, when someone spends so long underestimating you, they forget you might be building something in the background. She thought she took everything. But I had one thing left she never saw coming. 6 weeks after the final court date, I stood behind a folding table at a small community business fair, shaking hands with strangers and explaining what my little startup did. It wasn't flashy. No fancy sign, no investors, no influencer buzz. Just a logo I designed at 3 a.m. and a service I built from frustration. A digital platform that helps people gather and organize legal documentation before divorce proceedings. Clean, simple, empowering. Born straight out of the chaos I'd survived. People stopped. They listened. A few asked if I had experience in that space, and I smiled and said, "More than you'd believe." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I meant it with pride, not bitterness. The platform had started as a side project, something to keep me busy while my world was falling apart. But it grew. Word got around. A few blogs picked it up. Then a podcast. Then a family lawyer in Minneapolis offered to refer clients. I didn't see it coming. I didn't need to. It was mine. All mine. And she had no part of it. A few days later, I saw her again. I was picking up coffee at a small spot near the courthouse. Ironic, I know, when I heard someone call my name behind me. I turned around and there she was. Odessa. Hair longer. Face tired. Holding a plain black umbrella in the drizzle like life had suddenly turned gray on her too. She looked surprised when she saw me smile. "You look different," she said. "I am," I replied. There was a pause. She looked like she wanted to say something more. Maybe explain, maybe apologize, maybe fall back into old patterns. But I didn't give her the space. Not to be cruel, just to protect peace. Mine. I nodded politely and walked past her. That was it. No big speech. No drama. Just a quiet goodbye she hadn't expected to be permanent until that moment. Outside, the rain had stopped. I stood under a cloudy sky, sipping coffee that wasn't even that good, and I realized something I wish I'd known a year ago. She didn't break me. She revealed me. I wasn't the man she laughed at in court. I wasn't the one who needed her approval or begged her to stay. I was the man who walked away with nothing and built something better. The judge gave her the freedom she thought she wanted. But I got something rarer. A clean ending. And a brand new beginning.